Joining us now from Manchester is Nazir Afzal, Chief Crown Prosecutor for the North West. I wonder, Mr. Afzal, whether perhaps you felt that the cases wouldn't stand up in court because the court would see these young girls as already sexualised and beyond hope.
That might be what we thought maybe several years ago, but obviously the Rochdale grooming case is a case I brought because we shouldn't be focusing on the credibility or otherwise of the complainant. We should be looking at the credibility of the allegation. And so I'm obviously delighted that victims are speaking to Mrs. Coffey, and that means that I can ensure that our service to victims is improved. But at the same time, I recognise this, we're on a journey, and the figures that you've been given around the 13,000 complaints and the 1,000 plus convictions are counting different things, because many of our defendants will have multiple victims. And the Rochdale case is a case in point, where you had 9 defendants, but 47 victims, and they all got a sense of justice as a result of the conviction.
Well, with respect, Mr. Afzal, it's less the figures than the sort of comments which emerge for an excuse not to prosecute. For example, because of her poor record, her unsettled background as set out above, she's far from an ideal victim. But she's a child, and it seems that there's a culture of ignoring that these tiny young people were children.
I've said this many, many times before, that abusers target people who are troubled, who have these kinds of backgrounds. And so the guidelines that we issued a year ago are all about making sure that we go beyond the perception of the credibility of the victim. Now, the comments that are reported in Mrs. Coffey's report are not made by prosecutors. And one of them was made by a social worker, the other one was made by the father of the child. What the prosecutor must do is look at and anticipate what it is the defence may say about her in order to build a stronger case and rebut anything that might be suggested about her. So I need to see these particular cases. I've written to Mrs. Coffey in the hope that she can give me...
Surely it was precisely because the police had these views, expressed them in their notes, that the cases never went forward.
I don't know. I've asked for the information so I can look at these two particular cases. But I think the point needs to be made, Mr. Snow, that we have now the highest conviction rate for tackling child sexual abuse ever. We now have the lowest number of cases that we're not proceeding with. And many of these cases are being built strongly right from the beginning. And, you know, I think your report made the point. There are hundreds of operations that are currently being conducted, thousands, if not certainly hundreds of suspects, and many, many victims who've had the confidence to come forward.
But in a sense, therefore, you're saying Mrs. Coffey's report is pointless because it's all fixed. There's no problem where all this is in the past.
Far from it. I'm not complacent at all. There are many, many issues that we need to address and that we are addressing, particularly around, for example, the court process itself. I want to encourage victims to come forward. I don't want to think that actually, oh no, nobody's going to take you seriously. I've said, and I'll say it again, we've spent centuries, if not certainly hundreds of years, we've said to victims and children, be seen and not be heard. I want to hear them. I want them to feel confident that they can come forward and they'll be taken seriously. And we are taking more and more of them seriously.
Rotherham, Rochdale, Manchester, these northern cities, I mean, is it going on everywhere in your view?
That's the view of the Children's Commissioner. The report last year said there isn't anywhere on this planet, certainly in this country, which is not being targeted in this way. There are abusers everywhere. Most of them pick and select their victims. Most of them are in the family, probably. The reality is that we need to encourage more of them to come forward and not discourage them. And we've got a lot of work to do. We've made some significant progress in the last 3 or 4 years,
give me an example.
More to do.
Give me an example of how a young person could get to your prosecution service or in some way get to some authority that they can trust and immediately make their complaint. Is there some kind of a helpline? What have you got?
There are helplines. Local authorities have safeguarding boards. There are many safeguarding initiatives out there which encourage people to come forward. What we would like to do, though, is encourage more neighbours, more family members, more schools, more health professionals. They also have information that will enable us to build stronger cases. My hope and expectation is that we'll be in an even better place in a year's time, and you can hold me to account when you interview me in a year's time.
Nazir Afzal, we'll try and do that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.